Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from the NYPD say that it's a miracle no one was killed last week after a man went on a terrifying stabbing attack against his daughter and several other young family members, and responding officers were forced to shoot him to bring the situation under control. The disturbing situation unfolded around 10 a.m. on April 6th when the suspect, 49-year-old Longquin Chen, went into a violent rage at his home in Brooklyn's Bensonhurst neighborhood. It's unclear what happened in the lead-up to the incident or how exactly things got started, but what we do know is that they quickly escalated. When they did, Chen grabbed a meat cleaver and another large knife and began stabbing his 16-year-old daughter as well as his 3 young nieces who the teen had been babysitting. The nieces were only 8, 11, and 13. The resulting attack was horrific. According to reports, one of the victims was stabbed more than 10 times in the head and neck, while another lost a finger. Thankfully though, while this was happening, one of the girls, the 11-year-old, managed to run into a room and call 911. When police arrived at the scene, they were met by Chen's 12-year-old son, who had also run to the neighbors for help. He was not injured and was able to let officers into the house. Upon making their way inside, the officers heard screams coming from one of the rooms. After kicking down a door, they found Chen, who was still armed with a blood-covered cleaver. Despite being given numerous commands to drop the weapon, the 49-year-old allegedly refused and instead began running towards the officers. That's when they fired 7 shots, 3 of which hit Chen in the head and chest. Immediately after this, Chen and the victims were all rushed to local hospitals. Amazingly, it's said that all of them are expected to recover from their injuries. As for why all of this happened, so far no motive has been confirmed, though multiple local media sources have stated that Chen has a history of mental health issues. According to reports, he was diagnosed with both bipolar disorder and schizophrenia last year, and has been hospitalized for the conditions in the past. Several months ago, an unidentified relative even went as far as to file a complaint to the city's Administration for Children's Services, warning them that Chen was a potential danger to his family. However, it's unclear what, if anything, was done with this information. At the time of this recording, Chen remains in hospital, though he is now facing numerous charges, including attempted murder, assault, menacing a police officer, child endangerment, reckless endangerment, and weapons possession.
Representatives from New Mexico's Farmington Police Department released a major update in a lengthy investigation last week, announcing that they had arrested and charged the wife of a local man who died under suspicious circumstances nearly 4.5 years ago. The case began on the morning of November 29, 2020, when Farmington police received a 911 call from 51-year-old Heather Fernandez-Hofer. Heather stated that she had just found her husband Robert dead inside their home. Upon arriving at the scene, located on the 700 block of South Ivy Avenue, officers confirmed that Robert was deceased. The 49-year-old was found with stabbing injuries. It would later be determined that he had suffered 3 incredibly deep wounds to his chest. These had not only punctured his lungs, but had cut his coronary artery. Almost immediately, things got strange. When questioned about what had happened, Heather reportedly gave inconsistent versions of events. Even when she did start sticking to one story, though, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Heather apparently claimed that Robert had stabbed himself while he was alone in the computer room of their home. She said sometime after this, she helped him to clean his injuries with a washcloth, and the two of them went to sleep in separate rooms. That morning, she had woken up to find Robert dead on the floor. On top of sounding incredibly fishy, the problem with this story was that it apparently did not match the evidence at the scene. Investigators say that the vast majority of the blood at the scene was found on Robert's bed, not on the floor, and the severity of his stab wound suggested that he would have died within minutes of the injuries being inflicted. Things only got more suspicious when authorities went through Robert and Heather's text messages and discovered that they had been fighting a lot in the lead up to Robert's death. The pair had been arguing about money and Robert's past relationship, and a neighbor said that they had heard what they believed was Heather and Robert screaming at each other several hours before Heather called 911. Given all of this, it's unclear why it took police so long to move forward with the case. All we know is that they finally decided to do so on April 1st, announcing that they had arrested Heather and charged her with second-degree murder as well as evidence tampering. As if the situation couldn't get any sadder, according to Robert's obituary, he and Heather had been married for less than 3 months before his alleged murder. Tragically, it said that the 49-year-old was excited at the prospect of becoming a stepdad and grandfather, and was generally optimistic about his new life. He had supposedly even been inspired to follow in his new wife's footsteps career-wise. Before her arrest, Heather taught 3rd grade, and Robert was apparently planning to try and become a history teacher. Following the news this week, Heather's school announced that she had been placed on administrative leave. She currently remains in custody.
Authorities in Camden County, New Jersey say that a local hairstylist is looking at some serious prison time this week after she was caught allegedly trying to arrange the murder of her police officer ex-boyfriend and his teenage daughter, a plot that she apparently tried to carry out with a man she met on a dating app. The whole thing began early last month when the accused hairdresser in question, 26-year-old Jacqueline Diorio, broke up with her boyfriend, an unidentified Philadelphia police officer. Though it's not clear why the relationship ended between the pair, what we do know is what allegedly happened next. According to the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, near the end of March, Diorio began a new relationship with a man she met through the dating app Tinder. However, rather than starting fresh, she apparently soon made her true intentions clear. In subsequent meetings, text messages, and phone conversations, she allegedly told the man she would pay him $12,000 to act as her hitman. It wasn't just her ex-boyfriend that Diorio wanted dead, though. Apparently, in her mind, the $12,000 was a 2-for-1 situation, because she also demanded that the Tinder date kill her ex's 19-year-old daughter as well. Unfortunately for Diorio, it seemed the Tinder date was only pretending to go along with her ridiculous plan. On April 3rd, he turned her into police and became a confidential informant. The following day, he arranged to meet up with the 26-year-old one last time at a Dollar General store, where she reportedly handed over $500 meant to be a down payment on the double murders. As soon as she did, she was surrounded by police, who placed her under arrest. Diorio is now facing 2 counts of first-degree attempted murder, 1 count of first-degree conspiracy to commit murder, and 1 count of third-degree possession of a controlled dangerous substance. The last charge is for a bottle of unlabeled Xanax that officers apparently found on the 26-year-old's person at the time of her arrest. If convicted, Diorio is looking at a hefty prison sentence. The first-degree attempted murder counts alone could reportedly result in a sentence of up to 20 years.
Representatives from Florida's Hernando County Sheriff's Office released a tragic announcement in the case of a local teenage girl this week, revealing that she was viciously killed just weeks after her 16th birthday, and that her ex-boyfriend has now been arrested and charged with the crime. The whole thing began on the morning of March 27th, when a hiker made an awful discovery while walking through the Cypress Lakes Preserve. As he approached an area between 50 and 100 feet from the trailhead, he stumbled across the remains of a young woman. While authorities have so far declined to provide many details, we know that they quickly concluded that the female victim had been murdered with some kind of edged weapon, and what they have said is that the attack that killed her was exceptionally brutal and violent. After launching an investigation, they were able to determine that the victim was a local teen named Abriella Elliott. Heartbreakingly, Abriella, who was known to friends and family as Abby, had celebrated her 16th birthday just 2 weeks earlier. Because of the seemingly personal nature of the crime, police were convinced that this was not a random murder. More evidence soon backed this up when they learned from a witness that Abby was seen leaving her home at around 1:30 a.m. on the morning she was found dead. It was therefore theorized that whoever she had been going to meet up with was almost certainly her killer. It didn't take long to figure out who this alleged person was: her ex-boyfriend, 16-year-old Cameron Cubell. At a press conference this week, police stated that Cubell had been arrested in connection with Abby's murder after they learned that he had lied about his whereabouts on the night of the crime. Authorities so far have not confirmed the relationship between Cubell and Abby. However, Abby's family members told the media that the pair of them had previously dated and had broken up 6 months earlier. It's now alleged that Cubell killed Abby in a jealous rage after convincing her to meet up with him at the nature preserve where her body was found. Police say that they believe the crime was premeditated, and that's why the teen has now been charged with first-degree murder. They say they will likely be pushing to have him tried as an adult. While all of this information has definitely come as a shock to Abby's loved ones and the community in general, some of her classmates have since come out claiming that there were warning signs. According to several students who spoke with reporters, Cubell was known for his violent temper, and specifically had a history of jealousy and possessiveness in his relationships. One unidentified classmate described it this way, quote, "He had girlfriends, but he was the type to want to own them. Like, he would get jealous if they talked to anyone else. I saw him make his girlfriends cry because he was yelling at them." Another said, quote, "He had a bad reputation. He was like a bad boyfriend and girls knew that. So if they were his girlfriend, they would get tired of him and would break up with him." Abby's friends and family, meanwhile, say that she was an incredibly kind, happy, and loving person. They say they will remember her funny and goofy personality and the way she was always smiling, singing, and full of life. At the time of this recording, Cameron Cubell remains in custody.
Representatives from New York's Suffolk County Police Department say that they're investigating the aftermath of a disturbing crime this week after a teenage boy allegedly attacked his mother and grandmother, leaving one of them dead. The whole thing began at around 9:45 p.m. on April 7th when a driver was traveling down a section of Old Town Road in the hamlet of Selden. As she made her way through the 800 block, suddenly a woman came running out of her home. The woman, later identified as 36-year-old Vanessa Shendemi, was covered in blood and was screaming for help. After allowing Vanessa into her vehicle, both women called 911. That's when Vanessa told dispatchers that her 15-year-old son had attacked her with a knife. She also said she wasn't the only one home. Her mother, 56-year-old Conchetta Shendemi, was also inside. When officers arrived at the scene and made their way into the residence, sadly, there was nothing they could do for the 56-year-old grandmother. She had been stabbed numerous times and was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. In the meantime, Vanessa was taken to a local hospital and was treated for her own injuries. She had been stabbed in the face, arm, back, and neck, though thankfully survived the ordeal. While the 15-year-old alleged culprit was not found inside the residence, police were soon able to track him down. Using a canine team, they tracked him to an area about a third of a mile away near Dare Road and Buckskin Lane. Around this time, they also found 2 kitchen knives allegedly used to carry out the attack. As for why all of this happened, well, so far it seems authorities are remaining relatively tight-lipped. Investigators have stated that the attack began during an argument over, quote, content found on the team's computer, though declined to elaborate any further. Currently, the 15-year-old suspect's name has not been released due to his age. Following his arrest, he was charged with both murder and attempted murder. He remains in custody.
Authorities in the city of Clearwater, Florida, say that an unhinged man with a lengthy criminal history is back in custody again this week after he allegedly had a violent freakout at a children's lemonade stand when he was denied a free refill. According to reports, the whole thing fittingly went down on April Fool's Day when the 45-year-old suspect, Stephen Cusimano, was walking through a residential area on the south side of the city. At around 7:45 p.m., he came across a lemonade stand run by a group of local children near the intersection of Pinellas Street and South Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. After deciding to stop, he proceeded to purchase a glass from the group of young entrepreneurs. However, things quickly turned sour when Cusimano demanded a free refill and was told no. Apparently unable to accept this, he allegedly had a full-blown meltdown and forcefully grabbed an unidentified female victim there by the wrist. He then assumed a fighting stance and told her he would beat her up. Thankfully, the 45-year-old ran off before things got even more heated and was arrested a short distance away. Though he apparently admitted to everything that had happened, he defended his behavior by claiming that the female victim was, quote, talking shit to me. Police reports do not identify the victim by name or age, but again, given that this was a children's lemonade stand, it's safe to assume she was likely a minor. Anyway, after being arrested, Cusimano was slapped with a felony battery charge, an enhanced offense due to his extensive prior criminal history. That history reportedly includes prior convictions for battery, as well as convictions for trespassing, narcotics possession, disorderly intoxication, assault with a deadly weapon, theft, and disorderly conduct. Somewhat ironically, you might say that life has now given Cusimano his fair share of lemons, but only time will tell if he'll use them to make his own lemonade, rather than trying to steal someone else's.
Authorities in Spotsylvania County, Virginia say that 3 people are dead this week, and at least 3 others are injured following a terrifying broad daylight shooting that has been described as an illegal weapons sale gone wrong. The whole thing unfolded at around 5:30 p.m. on April 8th at a townhouse complex in the Old Greenwich area of the county. Police were alerted after terrified residents in the neighborhood called for help, informing them that dozens of rounds had been fired on the streets outside. When officers arrived, they found at least 6 people suffering from gunshot wounds. 3 of those people were later pronounced dead, while a further 3 were hospitalized for their injuries. 2 of the deceased have been identified as 18-year-old Chase Feaster and 18-year-old Alonzo Goffney. The third has not yet been named, but is said to be a 20-year-old man. As for the injured, almost no information has been released. It's said that at least one of the wounded is a suspect in the shooting and is one of 4 people now facing a number of charges. The 16-year-old was reportedly shot by a resident at the townhouse complex who responded to the situation with his own firearm before police arrived. That resident is not facing any charges. The 3 other suspects are 2 other unnamed juveniles, a 16 and a 17-year-old, as well as an 18-year-old named Jeremiah Upson. All 4 of the teens have now been charged with use of a firearm and commission of a felony, malicious wounding, and unlawful assembly with a firearm or weapon. Unfortunately, very little has been released about the crime in general at the time of this recording. Even though it's been days since the incident took place, all we really know is that the shooting was apparently the result of an illegal gun sale/robbery that spiraled out of control. Footage has been released of the 2 men carrying weapons shortly before the violence erupted. However, so far police have not commented further about this. As for residents of the townhouse complex, many say they are stunned by the terrifying incident. Several told local media in interviews that nothing like this had ever happened in the area before. They showed reporters shattered windows on cars and homes in the neighborhood, which they explained had been hit by dozens of shots fired during the shooting. Currently, the situation is still under investigation.
Representatives from the Pennsylvania State Police say that a man is facing numerous charges this week following a terrifying arson attack on the state's governor and his family during the middle of the night at their official residence. The whole thing began at around 2 a.m. on April 13th, when Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were awoken by banging at the door of the governor's mansion in Harrisburg. Shapiro, his wife, their 4 children, 2 dogs, and other extended family members had been asleep inside. To their horror, they quickly realized that the sounds they were hearing were state troopers who were desperately trying to warn them that the house was on fire and that they needed to get out right away. Moments before all of this, a man, later identified as 38-year-old Cody Balmer, had allegedly broken into the residence. After climbing a 7-foot-high iron fence surrounding the property, he reportedly began smashing windows. He was armed with a sledgehammer as well as at least 2 homemade incendiary devices. Upon smashing his way into the mansion, he began setting the devices on fire in the building's south wing. It appears that police figured out that something was going on very quickly, though they weren't able to locate Balmer before the incendiary devices were ignited. Their attention then turned to Governor Shapiro and his family, during which time Balmer escaped. Luckily, all of the victims were able to get out of the home safely and no one was injured. However, it's easy to see how things could have gone differently. Investigators say that Balmer, quote, clearly had a plan and described the arson attack as very methodical. They also revealed that a large section of the south wing of the governor's mansion had been gutted as a result of the fire. Balmer was arrested later that same day, and evidence including gloves he allegedly wore during the crime were collected from the area. So far, no explanation has been provided behind the disturbing attack, though it seems police have not ruled out possible political or religious motives. Only hours earlier, Governor Shapiro and his family had celebrated the first night of the Passover holiday with guests and members of the local Jewish community. In a statement following the attack, Shapiro suggested that regardless of the motive, the crime represented a growing problem in the country. Quote, this kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society, and I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It's not okay, and it has to stop. We have to be better than this. The only specific details we have so far come from an affidavit filed by police. The document states that following his arrest, Balmer told detectives that he had harbored hatred towards Shapiro and would have used his sledgehammer to beat him if he had encountered him while setting the fires. Balmer has now been charged with a number of offenses, including attempted murder, aggravated arson, terrorism, burglary, aggravated assault, recklessly endangering another person, and loitering/prowling at night. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.